Welcome back to States and Kingdoms. Today we're talking about the Grateful Dead and their album from 1968, Anthem of the Sun. Really fast, before we get into it, just a quick announcement. Not announcement. A quick suggestion. Please subscribe to States and Kingdoms if you have not already done so. We really, a plead, not even a suggestion. A begging, if you will. No, we really appreciate everyone that watches the videos, and if you subscribe, it really helps us. It's free. It's awesome. You won't even notice.
For now.
Anyway, back to the review. Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead.
We've actually gotten requests for this.
Yeah.
So we're finally doing it.
The Grateful Dead are a really interesting band.
Thanks for watching.
People, listen, they badmouth Grateful Dead quite a bit. There's a lot of people there, tell you that they're very boring, that you have to be high to enjoy it, and
or low.
To be fair, that's fair for some of it. I'm not, I'm.
Well, they do tend to get jammy.
Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm not a deadhead. I'm a meathead. No, I'm not. I'm not a full-on Grateful Dead. Everything they did is my cup of tea kind of a person.
You didn't go on tour with them.
No, I did that, but I just wasn't.
Wait, are you John Mayer?
Yeah, that's me, John Mayer, Sausage King of Chicago. It was when I discovered the earlier albums that I was actually very surprised.
Yeah.
Anthem of the Sun, Oxomoxo. Really have never said that aloud much, but Working Man's Dead, American Beauty, Wake of the Flood.
They're really, really good.
Yeah, I really like them, and of course they do. Anthem of the Sun is pretty intensely experimental. There's a lot of interesting things on it. Tape manipulation, different instrumentation. Different, rhythmic shifts, tempo shifts, stylistic shifts. There's a lot of really interesting things for 1968.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And then it slowly kind of goes away. They become more and more, I guess you could say, conventional, I guess you could say. But they kept some of what is on this album for a while. And, in each album maybe it's a little bit less, a little bit closer to Crosby, Stills and Nash in a way. It's not totally fair to say that, but
because those harmonies are kind of keystone. They're always
because
there.
the Byrds are definitely there in their lineage, and in a lot of ways I felt the Grateful Dead were continuing, what the Byrds were doing.
Yeah. In
their own way.
In a very San Francisco treats type of way.
Yes.
A rice-a-roni.
They're the rice-a-roni, yes. That's exactly it, Joe.
Yes.
Solved it.
They're one of the rice-a-roni bands. Just like the Jefferson Airplane.
I said rice-erroneous in the last video. Now you're saying rice-a-roni. You gotta say,
that's true.
There are some longer, jammy songs on this album, and I never. That's really not my style. It's not. For the most part, they're style.
Segregated to the second side.
Yes.
Which is nice.
For the most part, yes.
There's a little bit on the first side.
And this isn't my favorite album of theirs, but this is. You can't get around this one. I think if you've never listened to it, listen to it.
I did. You talking to me?
No. If you've never listened to it, I think you'll be surprised.
Oh yeah.
If your notion of Grateful Dead is basically what I think a lot of our generation's idea of them was,
that notion just crossed my mind.
So like side one of Anthem of the Sun is a lot of fun. And when I first heard this, I mean the first thing I thought, wow. This sounds like something else.
I know what you're thinking. It sounds like prog.
Well, it's interesting though. It's interesting for you to bring that up.
Short for progressive.
Fully on your shoulders, any hate that you may get for any of these things. Since
address your comments to me.
But I did that sort of that line between the bands of like 66, 67, 68 and the progressive bands, that really kind of start the next year. The line between psychedelic and progressive, or art rock and progressive. I mean, it's always been kind of unclear exactly
like
where
progresso.
Thank you. They're really, though, it's like, so this. There's definitely a crossover, of course. I mean, you have, bands like Genesis listening to, the Beach Boys and
Simon Garfunkel.
Yes, and of course, yes. I can't imagine not having them having heard this.
Yes, must have heard this.
So
It's just, there's a few moments. I mean, overall, but there are a few key moments that are just a little too on the nose for them not to have heard it.
Yeah.
Like
something
very specific breaks in songs and harmonic thingies.
I think
technical term.
Born Cross-Eyed is the one that is sounds like yes.
Yeah.
And obviously
it's not just the harmonies, but it's the guitar.
The bass.
And
there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. It's really interesting. I never, after this album on the next record, it's still there. It's starting to become a little bit more. There's a little bit more country. There's a little bit more, on it, and so you start to lose that connection by the next album. But on this one, I've never heard John Anderson or anyone talk about having heard this album. What that means to me, though, it's not. Doesn't even honestly, the Yes part of it, because we've done a lot of videos about Yes. Everyone knows what we think about them. The part of it that's really interesting is the Grateful Dead. How extraordinary they were. The harmonies. The bass. The different the shifts that occur in those songs are innovative. They're really innovative. They're inspiring. It was shocking to hear that from the Grateful Dead, who I would not,
I remember,
before, but of course now.
Listen to this first, and it was well past when I started listening to Yes, and so I remember you played it for me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, my mind was blown. I couldn't believe it.
It's because it's just something I've never heard anyone talk about. I've never heard anyone connect the Grateful Dead and Yes, and and most people would just scoff at that, of course, thinking about them later, where Yes has now, by the time of like 72, 73,
right?
I mean, they had gone,
nuclear
past this, but and the Grateful Dead had settled into a more
pastoral life.
And you're gonna say pastoral.
Why?
Anyway, that's really the thing. The main thing that stands out on this album. I mean, the first side is just innovative and amazing. I love the melodies. The harmonies are awesome, and the second side has some really good moments, some really good percussion on Alligator, and things that are interesting, but definitely go on and are more
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. The second side is definitely the kind of thing you just kind of let it play and, spread out with it.
Yeah, I'd say it's more in line with what you expect from the Grateful Dead and other bands, really, San Francisco bands in particular, of that time.
Yeah.
The first side, though, is not. And that first side deserves some recognition for being, something completely different.
Those songs are just amazing. There's so much going on, so much movement, and just, it's surprising. It is surprising if you haven't listened to it. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely worth listening to. And, it's beautiful songs.
And because of that, I was able to get into the Grateful Dead. And, I love those thank you very much. Thank you. By doing what you should always do, basically, is listen to the earlier records first instead of, the late record and going back. Yeah. And with the Grateful Dead, I mean, having such a long career, that's not...
It's a lot of albums.
It's
daunting.
It is. It's a little daunting. Yeah. So really doing it that way, though, it you really do appreciate where they're coming from. And those first, I'd say, I mean, letting the debut out of it, because that album is I'm not in love with. But I mean, from the second album to the fifth one, you know, I really, really love those. Those are special, really special albums. And I love Jerry Garcia's voice. I think he had a great voice.
It's a lovely voice, and it's soothing somehow. It's got real comforting tone. It's just
and it's powerful,
really, really
though.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a great voice, and their harmonies are beautiful. This album can turn you on to Grateful Dead, I think.
It definitely did for me.
And give you maybe an idea of, I suppose, maybe, you know, one of Yes's primary inspirations that no one has mentioned ever.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have John Anderson on the show. Thank you so much for watching our brief discussion of Anthem of the Sun. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all those things. Stay tuned for our next video, and we'll see you then.